The rain hammered against Marcus Thompson's apartment window like bullets, each drop echoing the emptiness that had consumed his life for the past 18 months. He sat in his threadbare recliner, staring at the eviction notice crumpled in his trembling hands, while his 8-year-old daughter Emma slept peacefully in the next room, blissfully unaware that tomorrow might bring homelessness. The irony wasn't lost on him. A man who once designed software for Fortune 500 companies now couldn't afford to keep a roof over his child's head. It was 11:47 p.m. when the screaming started. Marcus bolted upright, his heart racing as desperate cries pierced through the storm. He peered through his window into the alley below and saw here a woman in a torn business suit, blood streaming from her nose, stumbling through the rain as a man's voice bellowed threats from somewhere in the darkness. "Please, I don't have any cash on me," she sobbed, her voice breaking with terror. Marcus didn't think. He couldn't think. His feet were already moving, carrying him down 3 flights of stairs and into the storm. By the time he reached the alley, the attacker had vanished, leaving behind only the woman, curled against a dumpster like a wounded animal. "Hey, it's okay," Marcus whispered, approaching slowly with his hands visible. "I'm not going to hurt you. I live right up there." She looked up at him with eyes so filled with fear and pain that it physically hurt to witness. Her blonde hair was matted with blood and rain, her expensive clothes torn and muddy. She couldn't have been more than 35, but in that moment, she looked like a frightened child. I don't have anywhere to go," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the storm. Marcus Thompson had exactly $17 to his name, an eviction notice in his pocket, and a daughter who needed breakfast in the morning. The smart thing would have been to call the police and walk away. Instead, he extended his hand. "Come on, let's get you cleaned up." The woman who introduced herself only as Sarah spent the next 3 days on Marcus's couch, recovering from what appeared to be a brutal mugging. She spoke little, ate less, and flinched every time a door slammed in the hallway. Marcus found himself buying extra groceries with money he didn't have, sharing his meager meals, and giving her his only spare blanket. Emma, with the boundless curiosity of an 8-year-old, had taken an immediate liking to their house guest. "Sarah, can you help me with my math homework?" Emma asked on the 3rd evening, climbing onto the couch beside the mysterious woman. Marcus watched from the kitchen as Sarah's face softened for the first time since her arrival. She spent the next hour patiently explaining fractions, her voice gentle and encouraging. It was the first time Marcus had seen Emma truly engaged with schoolwork since her mother's death 2 years ago. "You're good with kids," Marcus commented later, as he tucked Emma into bed. "I used to. I had a different life before," Sarah replied, her eyes distant. "Thank you for this." "For helping someone you don't even know," Marcus shrugged, embarrassed by the gratitude in her voice. "My grandmother used to say that kindness is the only currency that multiplies when you spend it." On the 4th morning, Marcus woke to the smell of pancakes and coffee, a real coffee, not the instant stuff he'd been making do with for months. Sarah stood at his stove, fully dressed, with 2 packed suitcases beside the door. "I called a friend," she explained, not meeting his eyes. "Someone's coming to pick me up in an hour." Emma's face fell. "But Sarah, who's going to help me with my homework?" "You're a smart girl, Emma. You don't need my help." Sarah knelt down to the little girl's level. "But remember what we talked about yesterday, about being kind to people, even when they're different from you?" Emma nodded solemnly. Marcus felt something twist in his chest as he watched the exchange. In just a few days, this broken woman had brought more warmth to their tiny apartment than it had seen since Emma's mother died. "Sarah," he started, then stopped. What was there to say? That he'd grown accustomed to her quiet presence? That Emma smiled more when Sarah was around? That he was dreading the return to their hollow existence? Before he could find the words, a black sedan pulled up outside. Sarah kissed Emma's forehead, squeezed Marcus's hand, and was gone. Life returned to its familiar rhythm of struggle. Marcus continued his job search, sending out resumes that disappeared into the digital void. Emma started asking when Sarah would come back. The eviction notice grew more threatening. 2 weeks later, Marcus received an email that made his blood freeze. Mr. Thompson, we would like to offer you an interview for the senior software developer position at Meridian Corporation. Please reply at your earliest convenience. Meridian Corporation. The company that had destroyed his life. The company whose CEO had personally overseen the hostile takeover of his previous employer, resulting in mass layoffs just before Christmas 18 months ago. The company he'd sworn never to work for, even as desperation clawed at his sanity. But Emma needed new shoes. The electricity bill was overdue. Pride was a luxury he couldn't afford. The Meridian building towered over downtown like a glass monument to corporate power. Marcus sat in the sterile waiting room, his one good suit pressed and his resume printed on paper he'd bought with his last $5. When they called his name, he followed a secretary down a corridor lined with portraits of executives in expensive suits. The door opened, and Marcus's world tilted on its axis. Sarah sat behind an enormous mahogany desk, her blonde hair perfectly styled, wearing a power suit that probably cost more than his rent. A nameplate read Sarah Meridian, CEO. She looked up from his resume, her face pale but composed. Mr. Thompson, please, sit down. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Marcus felt the familiar rage building in his chest, the same fury that had consumed him for 18 months. The anger at faceless executives who played with people's lives like chess pieces. You, he whispered, his voice thick with betrayal. Marcus, please see. You're her. You're the one who destroyed everything. He stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. Do you have any idea what you did to us? To the hundreds of families you threw away for your profit margins? Sarah's professional mask cracked, revealing the frightened woman from the alley. I know what you must think. You stayed in my home. You ate my food. My daughter helped you with math problems, and you're the reason we're about to be evicted. Marcus's voice rose, 18 months of suppressed anguish pouring out. You sat at my table and let me talk about kindness while you're the CEO who ruined my life. Marcus, stop. Sarah's voice cut through his rage, quiet but firm. You're right about all of it. He fell silent, stunned by her admission. That night in the alley, I wasn't mugged, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. I was beaten by my ex-husband. Richard, he's on the board of directors. He found out I was planning to divorce him, to expose his embezzlement. He wanted me to disappear quietly. Marcus sank back into his chair, the fight draining out of him. I've been living in fear for months, trapped in a marriage that was slowly killing me, running a company according to my father's ruthless legacy. Tears began to fall down her cheeks. But for 3 days, in your tiny apartment, I remembered what it felt like to be human, to be kind, to matter for something other than profit margins. She opened a folder on her desk, revealing a thick stack of papers. I've been trying to undo the damage, Marcus. The layoffs, the destroyed lives, the families torn apart by corporate greed. It's taken me months to outmaneuver the board, to gather enough support to change course. She slid a document across the desk. This is a reinstatement offer for you and 127 other employees who were wrongfully terminated. Full back pay, benefits, and a guarantee that this kind of mass layoff will never happen again under my leadership. Marcus stared at the paper, the words blurring together. Why? Because 3 days with you and Emma taught me more about leadership than my Harvard MBA ever did. You took in a stranger without asking anything in return. You shared what little you had with someone who, for all you knew, might have been dangerous. You showed me what real strength looks like. She stood up, walking around the desk to stand in front of him. I can't undo the past 18 months of suffering I caused you. But I can offer you something better than an apology. I can offer you justice, and a chance to help me rebuild this company into something we can both be proud of. Marcus looked up at her, seeing not the CEO who had ruined his life, but the broken woman from the alley who had helped his daughter with her homework. The woman who had knelt on his kitchen floor to comfort Emma. The woman whose presence had, for just a few days, made their small apartment feel like a home. There's one condition, he said finally. Sarah nodded, waiting. Emma gets to visit you at the office sometimes. She's been asking when you're coming back. For the first time since that night in the alley, Sarah smiled, really smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. 3 months later, Marcus walked into his new office at Meridian Corp, where a photo of Emma helping Sarah with math homework sat proudly on his desk. Outside his window, he could see the city stretching toward the horizon, full of possibility and second chances. Sometimes the most powerful transformations begin with the smallest acts of kindness, like opening your door to a stranger in the rain and remembering that humanity is not measured by what we have, but by what we are willing to give.